So section 4.2 comes from this worksheet located on Google Classroom. The first thing that we're going to do is work over this second problem right here. So that second problem looks like this. Now, this is all about adding, subtracting, and multiplying polynomials. Remember, we talked about yesterday what a polynomial actually is. Polynomial is just something that has a positive whole number as an exponent. So if you look at all of these, you'll see that they have positive whole number exponents up here. We don't have any fraction exponents. We don't have any radical exponents. We don't have any negative exponents. I don't care what the numbers in front look like at all. I only care about the exponents that are attached to the x. All right. So that being said, adding, subtracting, and multiplying are pretty straightforward if you remember that stuff from Algebra 1. The biggest thing that you have to remember with adding and subtracting is you are only allowed to combine like terms. Essentially, that's what this is all about. This is all about just combining like terms, and it should be a pretty straightforward topic for you. Because realistically, what you need to do is just note whether things have the same exponent. If they do, you can combine them. If they don't, then you can't. That's pretty much it. So what I like to do before I get started is I like to identify the terms that are alike. So I can see that I have a negative 12x to the fourth and a 10x to the fourth. They both have an x to the fourth attached to them. The next thing that I look at here is I see a negative 3x squared. I don't see any other x squareds anywhere. So I can't do anything with that. I also see that I have a 9 and a 1. Those two things are alike because they don't have any x's. And then finally, the last one is this 2x to the third. So I can see that I have some that are alike and some that are not alike. So I can only combine the ones that are alike. So I take negative 12x to the fourth plus 10x to the fourth. There's nothing that I have to distribute here because that's a plus sign. A plus sign is no problem. We can basically pretend the parentheses don't exist and move on. So negative 12x plus 10 is going to be negative 2x to the fourth. Negative 3x squared and positive 2x to the third, those can't combine, so I'm just going to rewrite them like this. And then I've got 9 and 1, which gives me 10. Now the question always asks us to put things in standard form. Now standard form is something that I think should be pretty straightforward, but if you don't remember what it is, standard form is highest degree to lowest degree. So I can see that I have x to the fourth, x squared, x to the third. So I'm just going to rewrite this so that my exponents go in descending order. So I get negative 2x to the fourth plus 2x to the third minus 3x squared plus 10. Now you can obviously see how this isn't that difficult of a topic, but it definitely is something that lends itself to very simple, dumb mistakes. If you're like me, you make a lot of dumb mistakes. Like, oops, I forgot a negative sign, or oops, I forgot to add something, or oops, I subtracted instead of adding. I do that all the time. That's something that I make that mistake constantly. So this, you just have to really make sure that you're paying attention to what's going on. Now, this is a big thing with partial credit as well. If you give me the wrong answer and absolutely no work to go along with it, I won't give you partial credit for it. If you show me your work, like if I got 9 here instead of 10, I have my work up here that shows I had 10, I just made a stupid mistake. I can give partial credit like that. I can't give partial credit if you don't show me anything. All right? So that is adding. Adding is really straightforward. I don't think it should be an issue. Also, subtracting is pretty straightforward. So I don't know that that's going to be a huge issue either, but let's go through it and talk about it just in case. So this is from that worksheet, same worksheet. This is this one right here. Second one down on the right side. So if you're working on that worksheet, it's right there. So now what I've got is obvious. I've got a minus sign. Now this is absolutely no different from an adding problem, except for the fact that there's a subtraction sign here. All we have to do is turn this into an addition problem. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to keep the front the same. So negative x to the third plus 2x squared minus 9. And then I'm going to change this thing to a positive, and I'm going to distribute that all the way through. So plus negative x to the third, plus negative x to the third minus x plus x squared minus 2. So if you notice, all I did was took this symbol, made it a positive, and made every one of these opposite. Negative x to the third, negative x, negative x squared, which becomes positive, and negative 2. So now, if you notice, this is the exact same as an addition problem. Now nothing changes. So I'm going to look at my like terms. So I have an x to the third. So negative x to the third plus negative x to the third will give me negative 2x to the third. I like to work in standard form right away, so that way I don't have to have that extra step. So right here I can see a 2x squared and an x squared. So 2x squared plus x squared gives me 3x squared. And then I look for any x's that I can see, and I see that I have a negative x. And then I have my constants. So negative 9 plus negative 2 is negative 11. So this thing right here would end up being my answer in standard form. I just take that step and show my standard form right away. Does anybody have any questions about those two things? So I'm hoping that those are pretty straightforward. I'm hoping that those are things that no one really has too big of an issue with because it's just combining like terms. So now let's go through one that's a little bit trickier. So if we look at something like this one. So if we look at this one, all this is foiling, but it's foiling on steroids. So all we're going to do is we're going to pretend that this problem is only this big at first. So all you're going to do is pretend that this problem is that big at the beginning. Then you're going to do your normal double distribution where you do first times first, outside times outside, inside times inside, and last times last. So you're foiling this thing. So I'm going to do 5x times 3x, which is going to give me 15x squared. 5x times 1, which is going to give me 5x. Negative 2 times 3, which is going to give me negative 6x. And then negative 2 times negative 1, which is going to give me negative 2. Now, big disclaimer here, simplify. So you remember how a while ago I said future you is going to be very, very happy when you simplify when you're supposed to? This is one of those cases that you're going to be very happy when you're simplifying. All right. So by simplifying, I just mean combine your like terms. So I have 15x squared minus x minus 2. And now remember, I have not actually completed my problem yet. I haven't taken care of this thing here yet. So I need to multiply this by negative x plus 6. So I need to multiply that by negative x plus 6. Now the reason that future me is going to be very happy is because if I didn't simplify, and don't write this part down, if I didn't simplify, I would have to multiply this thing up here by negative x plus 6. And if you look, that means I'm going to have to double distribute with 4 terms instead of 3. I'm lazy. I would much rather do less work. And this one step of simplification makes my life in the future a lot easier. So I would do that if I were you. If you don't want to do that, then don't, but I would suggest it. So now this is just distribution, but it's triple distribution at this point. So the easiest way to do this is to just draw lines from your first term to each of the other terms in the parentheses first. So 15x squared times negative x squared will give me negative 15x to the third. 15x squared times 6 will give me, oh boy, mental math, 90x squared. Then we just continue on and we keep working. Negative x times negative x is positive x squared. Negative x times 6 is going to give me negative 6x. And then finally for the last one, we've got negative 2 times negative x is positive 2x. And then negative 2 times positive 6 gives me negative 12. And now, obviously, I haven't simplified everything completely, but if I have everything in standard form at the beginning, so if this parenthesis is in standard form and this parenthesis is in standard form, notice how it actually pairs up the things that have to be combined anyway. And it basically keeps it in standard form. There's just one extra step that we have to make. So this is going to turn into negative 15x to the third plus 91x squared minus 4x minus 12. And this will be my final answer for my standard form. Any questions that you guys can think of as we sit here right now? Any issues? Are there any questions from here on this worksheet that you guys would like to work through because you think that they'd be tough, because you think that they'd be challenging, because you'd like to try it on your own and see what I get when I'm done? Is there anything that you guys would like to see or work through?
Didn't you say like we can divide too? Can we do one of those problems?
You can do what?
Didn't you say we can divide, or am I just imagining that?
We're going to divide later. So I did say divide at the beginning, but division is a thing that actually uses factoring, and I don't like the method the book uses for this. So we actually, that's why we go from 4.2 to 4.4. 4.3 is about division. But in order to do division, you need to be able to factor in certain ways. And factoring comes after division. So I just think they have it out of place. So I like to do division later. Any other questions that you guys have before I stop recording?